People Who Gained Real-Life Superpowers After an Accident, Part 3. In 1971, Edwin Robinson was in a severe car crash that made him completely blind and partially deaf. 9 years later, he ventured outside his home to rescue his pet chicken from the rain when he was suddenly struck by lightning. But due to the high voltage blast from the lightning strike, he miraculously could see and hear perfectly fine again. During Adam Rayner's early life, he suffered from dwarfism, and at his tallest, he came in at 4.5 feet. But at the age of 21, he developed a tumor on his pituitary gland, which led him to grow to a staggering 7 feet 8 inches within a few years. This made him the only human to ever be classified as both a dwarf and a giant in the same lifetime. Rory Curtis got into a car accident that was so severe he fell into a coma for several days. Thankfully, he came out of it, and when he woke up, he could magically speak perfect French, even though he had only taken a few French lessons 12 years before the accident.
Real-life human superpowers. Let's go. LRP5, or Unbreakable Bone Disorder, is a genetic mutation that has been found in less than 1,000 people over the last 25 years. The mutation can make a human's bones almost 8 times more thicker than the average person, which means they're almost unbreakable. The disorder was first discovered when a man was involved in a deadly car accident, and he walked away with no broken bones at all. Aside from walking away from car crashes, scientists also discovered that people with this disorder could fall from 10 stories above the ground and not break a single bone in their body. Since this disorder is fairly new, and there's almost no side effects, there could be many people growing up without knowing about their superhuman disorder. Who knows, maybe you have it, but don't try testing it out. If you learned something, leave a like, maybe even a follow.
Archaeologists in Turkey have just discovered a sarcophagus which they believe could belong to Saint Nicholas. Yeah, the real man who inspired Santa Claus. It's a Christmas miracle. The tomb was uncovered at the Church of St. Nicholas, where he served as a bishop in the 4th century. The church was built over his original burial site, but in the 11th century, his bones were reportedly moved to Italy. So for centuries, everyone kind of assumed that there was nothing left. But then, they made this new discovery hidden right near the altar, and it matches historical records, making experts believe that this could be his original resting place. I mean, if we find IRL Santa, IRL Santa before GTA 6, how do we top that?
Here are the creepiest Christmas urban legends, part 1. Ever heard of the Yule Cat? This is an extremely creepy cat that's said to originate from Iceland. According to stories, the Yule Cat enjoys snacking on people during the holiday season. And what makes the Yule Cat even weirder is that it specifically targets people who haven't received any new clothing before Christmas Eve. Iceland is also home to Gryla. According to Iceland lore, Gryla is a giant ogress who leaves her cave in the mountains to feed on children during Christmas. To make the story even creepier, Gryla keeps the Yule Cat as a pet. What the hell is going on in Iceland? Then we have Belschnickel, and this one comes from Germany. According to people of the Rhine, Belschnickel is an old bearded man who visits children during the holidays with Santa Claus. If you were good that year, he'd give you cakes and candy. If you were bad, well, Belschnickel would pull out a switch and whip the children until they behaved. This is probably why Dwight from The Office loved him so much. There's also Krampus. This is one you've probably heard about from movies and books. In the Alpines, Krampus is a horned demonic figure who visits the homes of naughty children on December 5th and punishes them. In some versions of the story, he hits them with birch rods. In others, he straight up takes them back down to hell with him. The Germans definitely know how to scar kids for life.
Imagine ripping up your letter you wrote to Santa Claus, not knowing that once you do this, you'll be summoning the demonic version of Santa, aka Krampus. The creature is described as the dark shadow of Santa Claus, who is believed to punish those who he deems naughty, or people who have lost their Christmas spirit. Now, it's not only Krampus that you have to worry about, because like Santa Claus has his elves, Krampus has his own too. He has evil gingerbread men, as well as evil elves. And on top of that, he has an absolutely terrifying Pop Goes the Weasel. Now, the movie premises on a dysfunctional family who ends up gathering together for, of course, Christmas, and all of a sudden the power goes out. And of course, the reason the power is out is because Krampus has been summoned. And let's just say they're not having a jolly time. And for all of you who are going to say you're going to fight back against Krampus, you guys are going to fight off his not only evil elves and his whole evil team, but Krampus, the demonic version of Santa Claus himself. It's said that no fight back against Krampus does actual damage to him. He's more or less immortal. Once you find yourself on his naughty list, there's no way of getting off. The movie, of course, that I'm talking about is Krampus, and in my opinion, it is one of the best Christmas horror movies you could possibly watch. Now look, we only have a couple more days left until Christmas, so if you haven't ever seen it, I suggest you watch it. And of course, don't forget to like and follow for more.
Dirty facts about history that school probably didn't teach you, part 7. The first vibrator in history was invented by Cleopatra. She filled up a hollow gourd with angry bees, causing the gourd to vibrate rapidly, and the rest is history. 4 different popes have died during or because of sex. 2 of a heart attack during, and 2 because they were killed by the husbands of the women that they had an affair with. Immediately after bussing onto his wife, the father of microbiology, Antoine van Leeuwenhoek, whipped out his microscope and observed sperm cells for the first time in human history. According to some accounts, King Tut was mummified with a boner. If you have an erection that lasts longer than 2,000 years, please contact an archaeologist for immediate medical assistance. The man who created autopilot, Lawrence Sperry, tested it out by having sex on board with his lover. However, the two bumped the controls and crashed the plane.
This is a scary story about the fake Santa, part 1. It was Christmas Eve. An 11-year-old named Julia was decorating her Christmas tree. Her mom wasn't home because she was working as a nurse at a local hospital. The two of them lived in a small apartment in the suburbs. Her mom called her and said she won't be home till late. Julia said okay and continued decorating the tree. Even though Julia was home alone, she still felt safe because she was on the 6th floor of the apartment building. She finished decorating and started to wait for her mom, when suddenly, she heard scratching at the door. She stopped what she was doing and she listened very carefully. She then approached the door and looked through the peephole. Standing there was a man dressed as Santa. Then nervously she said, "Who's there?" The man said, "It's Santa Claus. Let me in, I'm cold and tired and hungry." Julia then said, "My mom isn't home, please leave." The man's eyes filled with anger. He then started to bang on the door and ring the doorbell continuously. "It's Santa Claus, Julia," he said. "Have you laid out milk and cookies for me, Julia?" Julia's stomach then dropped. How does he know my name, she thought.
Here are 10 fun facts about how the Grinch stole Christmas that you definitely didn't know about. This movie is more adult than it seems because in the beginning of the movie, in which the Grinch is found by the 2 women, the party that they're at is a swingers party. But actually, speaking of that, Audrey Gazel, the wife to Dr. Seuss, actually kind of watered down the original story because it was supposed to be more of an adult movie. Jim Carrey actually went under torture endurance training because of all the makeup he had to wear. That was about like 50 pounds of makeup, and they put him through all of that training so that he wouldn't go crazy. A makeup artist actually took a leave of absence because how Jim Carrey was treating everyone on set, and then she came back after Jim Carrey agreed that he would start to treat people better. Jeffrey Tambor, who played the mayor of Whoville, actually suffered gout on set. Ron Howard, the director of the film, put on the Grinch makeup for one of the days of shooting so that he could understand what Jim Carrey was truly going through. Ron Howard also casted some of his own relatives, one being his daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, who is in The Help, the Jurassic World movies, and has also become a director. But he also casted his brother Clint, who plays Hubris, the sidekick to Mayor Mayhew. Many of the extras in the movie were actually Cirque du Soleil performers, which makes sense because they were doing a bunch of acrobats throughout Whoville. Second graders actually helped with the design of the costumes in the movie, which makes a lot of sense because a lot of them look like just stuff thrown onto costumes, but it makes so much sense for Whoville. Max was played by 6 different sheltered dogs. Horton from Horton Hears a Who actually makes an appearance at the top of Whoville's town center, and at the end of the movie, Cindy Lou Who passes Max a plate of green eggs and ham.
Have you ever wondered why so many Latino families celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve and not on Christmas Day? Well, to make a long story short, it's because of a Catholic belief. That belief is that Jesus was born at midnight, which is why we all get together on Noche Buena and not Christmas morning. We eat good food and wait for that clock to hit midnight. Some families will go to midnight mass while others stay home and celebrate and embrace each other and wish each other a Feliz Navidad right at midnight. Even though it all stems from the same Catholic belief, it's celebrated differently across Latin America. In some places like Mexico, for example, the days leading up to Noche Buena are celebrated with Las Posadas. That's why December 25th feels calm. Resting and eating good leftovers because we did all of our celebrating in the days leading up to Christmas Day. That's why for many Latinos, Christmas isn't about waking up early, it's staying up late together. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. Les deseo una muy bonita Navidad, and I will see you guys after the holiday.
The last one completely blew my mind. There exists a plankton called dinoflagellates that if you consume it, will reverse your sense of hot and cold, and it can last for years. Scientists recently discovered some sharks living in an active volcano, but they can't get in to study them because, well, it's a volcano and it's too hot. In 1972, Vesna Vulovic fell out of a plane at 33,000 feet, no parachute, and lived. Sour Patch Kids and Swedish Fish are made by the same manufacturer, and in fact, the red Sour Patch Kid is literally a Swedish fish, except with sour sugar on it. The only people that know how to open the United States president's car doors are the Secret Service. And last but not least, 1 million people got together and decided to follow this clown on TikTok, and I've got to say, guys, I'm touched. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for giving me this platform and for supporting me, and I love you guys. Thank you.
The darkest Christmas traditions to ever exist. Many European countries celebrated the character Krampus, who was basically the devil compared to Saint Nick. He was a demonic goat monster that would go around whipping bad children and kidnapping them in his sack and enslave them. This is actually kind of where the whole elves thing came from. In Austria and Bavaria, they don't have Santa Claus, they have someone named Frau Perchta. She was sort of like the witch version of Santa Claus and would also see who was naughty or nice. But instead of giving bad children coal, she would slit open their stomachs and fill them up with straw. In Iceland, you better pray that you get socks for Christmas. For there, they have the Yule Cat, and any children that don't get clothes for Christmas get devoured by the Yule Cat. And if you didn't get any new clothes, you had to leave your old ones out for the cat to see and pray to God they meet his standards. In France, they tell the story of Hans Trapp, a man who decided to cannibalize children after being kicked out of the church. He returns every year on Christmas disguised as a scarecrow, going door from door looking for children to eat.
Phobia test. Part 1. Trypophobia.
I'll say goodbye soon, though it's the end of the world. Don't blame yourself now, and if it's true, I will surround you.
And sing this little song. Run, rabbit, run, rabbit.
Run, run, run.
Run, rabbit, run, rabbit.
Run, run, run.
These are 5 rare children with real superpowers. 1. This is Ben Underwood. He was born in California on January 26, 1992, and seemed like a very healthy child. But sometime later, his mother noticed a strange shine in his right eye. However, the boy showed no signs of vision problems. Shortly after, a medical examination determined that he had cancer in his eyes, and there was no other option but to remove them to save his life. As expected, Ben's world changed completely from that moment on. Completely blind from such an early age, he began to develop a process in which his ears acquired a special sensitivity, learning to identify objects through sound. This ability is known as echolocation and is highly developed in animals like bats, but very few cases have occurred among humans. He makes clicking noises with his tongue, which, when hitting objects around him, produce an echo. He is able to hear the echo and determine what the object is, how far away it is, and even what material it is made of. Thanks to this auditory vision, he was able to do activities like running without getting lost, playing basketball, riding a bike, playing video games, surfing, fighting opponents, and practicing martial arts. Without a doubt, he is a true superhero with real superpowers.
These 3 kids are pure evil. In 1966, in the southwestern town of Greenwich, Connecticut, there were 3 ill-tempered kids, Damien, Caleb, and Axel. The townspeople called them the Little Satans. From the age of 5, the Little Satans began to show a cruel side, frequently capturing small animals in the town's woods. The other kids in town were terrified and kept their distance. However, the parents of these 3 believed it was just harmless childhood mischief. Most townspeople chose to stay silent, fearing retaliation from these wealthy and influential families. But the Little Satan's behavior became increasingly brazen. One day, a few children from town went missing, and the last time anyone saw them, they were with the Little Satans. Yet, due to a lack of direct evidence, the local police were unable to launch a deeper investigation. One officer, Marcus Hayes, refused to give up. He kept investigating quietly, watching the three families day after day. Then, one night, all the Little Satan's parents gathered together, and Marcus sensed that something was wrong. He immediately called for backup, and they eventually discovered a hidden basement. Inside, they found the missing children from town. As Marcus dug deeper into the case, he uncovered something even more terrifying. Do you want to know what Marcus found? Comment Little Satans to watch part 2.
Fun fact, St. Nicholas was a real person who lived sometime around the year 280 in modern-day Turkey. He had a large amount of inherited wealth and traveled the countryside giving away his money to the poor and sick. One day St. Nicholas arrived in a village and heard the story of a rich man with 3 daughters who had lost his wife and in his grief had spent his wealth and was now poor. The father was worried his daughters would never be married, since back in those days, the woman's family would have to pay a dowry to the man's family in order for the marriage to be accepted. St. Nicholas waited until dark and snuck into the father's home and saw the girls that hung their freshly washed socks by the fire to dry. St. Nicholas put gold coins in each one of the girls' socks so that they could pay a dowry and be married. As he was leaving, the father caught him and thanked him. St. Nicholas did not want any recognition and told the father not to tell anyone, but the father didn't listen. The father used the gold coins to pay dowries and all 3 girls were married. The legend of St. Nicholas spread throughout the countryside, leading people to hang their socks by the fire in hopes that St. Nicholas would break in and leave them some gold coins.
Christmas facts that I bet you don't know. The reason that Christmas is celebrated across the world is that it is known as the birthday of baby Jesus. But many historians say that Jesus was born in the springtime and not in the winter. At one point, it was illegal to celebrate Christmas in America. For 22 years from 1659 to 1681, any American caught celebrating Christmas received a fine. And if it wasn't for Coca-Cola, Santa would have looked a lot different than he does today. Before an artist sketched this picture of Santa in 1931, he looked a lot different. In the years prior, the jolly old man didn't really wear red, and many people thought that he was kind of scary looking. So it's a good thing that Coke made that ad. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
So while everyone is paying attention to all the chaos that's ensuing with Annabelle, no one is paying attention to a darker, much scarier doll that the Warrens have. I'm gonna give you guys a warning before I flash it on the screen. 3, 2, 1. This is the Warren Shadow doll, and the second that I see photos of it, I just feel icky. And this doll doesn't just haunt you, it follows you into your dreams. And if anything, this doll is more of a weapon than it is a haunted object. It is made up of animal bones, fingernails, feathers, and a human tooth. It does not have the same friendly face that Annabelle has. And this doll isn't here by accident either. According to Ed and Lorraine Warren, this doll was actually made by people who were doing occult magic and using rituals to summon spirits and bind it to the object. Allegedly, according to the Warrens, it was also created with rituals involving human. What happens with the doll is people will actually use it for spells. They'll use someone's name and a photo of the doll and then send them that curse. If you have knowledge on occult magic, you can essentially do whatever you want to that person. It does this by going into your dreams, paralyzing the victim with fear, and then causing real-world damage, such as losing a job or a breakup, divorce, or even just unaliving. A man allegedly mocked the doll one time, and it infiltrated his dreams over and over again, and then eventually started to suffer a health decline, and the Warrens believe that this was connected in some way. Thankfully, the doll is totally sealed, locked away. Okay, but I just looked up on TikTok that there is some videos of it just being out and about. So now I'm wondering, is it on tour with Annabelle? I'm confused.
This woman begged someone else to end her life and explained how she wanted it done. 35-year-old Sharon Lopatka was an entrepreneur from Maryland. She was quietly building an online business where she would sell crafts and digital services. Sharon wanted to explore the darkest corners of human experience, which is pain, submission, and ultimately death. While she didn't want her life to be ended in the traditional sense, she wanted to die by design. At this time, the internet was still young and unregulated, so she had a plan to look for someone to do it for her. The year is 1996, and Sharon is visiting fetish chat rooms and underground forums that are devoted to torture, bondage, and death fantasies. She exchanged hundreds of messages with strangers who shared or claimed to share her interests, but no man ever took her seriously. That was until she met 45-year-old Robert Glass. Robert was a computer analyst from North Carolina. He was married, had children, but he had a secret double life online. For weeks, the two exchanged graphic emails, and Sharon is telling him that she wants to be tortured and unalived and is telling him how he should do it. One of Sharon's final emails says, "You will cause my death, but it will not be murder." On October 13th of 1996, Sharon boarded an Amtrak from Maryland to North Carolina, and she left behind a note for her husband that said, "I'm going away. If you ever find my body, don't think badly of the man who did this." Once Sharon arrived in North Carolina, she went to Robert's trailer where they would spend several days together and they would act out violent sexual rituals. At one point, things went too far and Robert strangled Sharon with a nylon cord, ending her life. 12 days later, police officers were searching Robert's home and they ended up finding Sharon's body in a shallow grave 75 feet away from his home. Her personal belongings like clothes, computer disks, ropes were scattered all around the scene. This case truly shocked investigators. It was one of the first murders in history to be solved through email evidence. In January of 2000, Robert pled guilty and was sentenced to 6 years and 7 months in prison. On February 20th of 2002, Robert suffered a fatal heart attack behind bars just 2 weeks before he was supposed to be released.
I don't know if you guys saw, but some guy in New Jersey was just walking the street and somebody shot the guy in the back with a bow and arrow and killed him. Now the killer decided, after I shoot this guy with the bow and arrow, I'm going to go inside of a home and light it on fire. So he went inside of the home, he lit it on fire. It was like hours and hours of standoff with the cops and the SWAT team and everything. Eventually the SWAT team and other units arrived. They stopped the fire. The guy emerged armed like crazy and covered in soot from being in the fire. But they finally apprehended the guy after that long. The victim was 45-year-old Pablo Criollo. He was literally minding his own business walking too. This guy was just a nice guy. The killer's name is Oscar Fiju. He's 44 years old. The sad thing about this too is that Pablo's daughter is just asking the mother, when is my dad coming home? Where's my dad and stuff? She's confused about his absence. And I mean, obviously with kids that are that young, you can't just say, your dad got killed. They're not going to really understand that or cope with that well. Eventually she's going to find out and it's going to be heartbreaking. Neighbors of the killer said he looked like the devil. I guess he had an evil look to him. Let me know what you guys think about this story in the comments. This is really sad.
All Muslims that watch anime, wallahi, jinns might possess you. Just listen to what the sheikh said after removing a jinn from a boy.
Extracted a jinn from a kid. To him, number one tool that we use against you is porn. Number two, anime. We use anime, people are addicted to it, and our goal is to make you say,
wallahi, it's crazy how jinns use the form of anime to possess children and make them devil worshippers. This does not make anime haram, just be careful with what you're watching. Share this with all your friends and spread awareness.
Alright, let's get into part 2. I've been at a Spotify event all day, so I feel like I've been in the sun and I need like a lot of TLC on my skin. The last story took place in a small world with the mom who like kind of finished out the role of her camera, right? You remember in that story, she pointed the camera up towards the ceiling and she captured something she did not expect. So the day kind of finishes out and nobody ever really knew like what happened, why they were escorted off of a small world until they looked at that camera roll. So I kind of sheared this one down because it was really thick last time and it took forever to dry. The strangest thing that they noticed right away was that there appeared to be a pair of red overalls above them. Anybody who knows about A Small World, you know that the old uniform from the 90s was red overalls. Legend has it what they saw above them and captured on camera was an employee who was dangling. The creepiest part about this, there is allegedly a picture online that shows the red overalls and proves the legend.
3 things you didn't know were haram. The last one is going to shock you the most. Number 1, celebrating Christmas. Number 2, you are not going to believe this.
Celebrating Christmas.
Number 3, this one is shocking. Celebrating Christmas. Oh, please take down the tree and go in a
prayer man.
They put a warning on the documentary saying that they were not responsible for any strange things that might happen to you after watching it. Horror movies do not freak me out, but real life stuff does. I just got done watching a documentary about a guy who wanted to get cursed. He went to several people and was like, look, what's the most negative thing you got? I had to reach out to ask him some questions because I was like, what on earth would possess you to do something like this?
So what on earth would possess a person to go looking for a curse?
if you really believed in curses, you wouldn't do it. My reality was I didn't really believe a curse would have any effect on me. And that's not to say that I didn't believe in the paranormal or the supernatural, but really I just didn't think that magical practitioners necessarily had the power to inflict a curse on someone else. The reality is I started to feel a lot differently after having gone through this process. I absolutely do not recommend people do this.
I wanted to know so badly too, is his crew okay?
My exec producer, at one point he called me up that he started having sort of heart palpitations, and he thought to himself, oh no, what have I done? I've been involved in this cursed film and now it's come to get me. Fortunately he was fine, but he certainly got worried for a moment. And I also know that my local producer in Mexico, he called me up a few months after going through the events that we do in Mexico. He was involved in a small car accident, and then I believe his home was burgled. He was beginning to get worried. I was thinking, what have I unleashed? What's happening here? Fortunately, it did seem to stop there.
Because of the warning at the beginning, has anyone reached out that's watched this documentary and had something bad happen to them?
I don't believe that people watching this film have been affected by it, although I have had a few random messages from people on social media that said during the moment that they were watching it, their cat freaked out or they lost power in the house. There's been a couple of odd things. I'm not sure it's enough to prove that this is a cursed film.
Was there any scary thing behind the scenes that didn't make it into the film?
I went to a place in India, which was a very revered and sacred place where actual human sacrifice had taken place many hundreds of years ago, but the site was still there. It's a very revered location, and the actual swords that took part in that human sacrifice, in many human sacrifices, were still there. Probably the eeriest, creepiest place we went to. It kind of freaked us all out a little bit. Feelings and atmosphere don't always come across on film, and unfortunately that scene didn't make it into the film.
I wonder, do you think if somebody was to watch this film, would they potentially be putting themselves at risk?
The intention by the practitioners was solely aimed at me. But I'll let you into a little secret. All of the curse scenes that happened, you don't get to see every single word in that process. We edited it down, partly for time and partly for safety reasons. So that said, we did put a warning up at the start of the film just in case.
If you could go back and warn yourself before filming any of this, what would you say?
I don't know if I would warn myself, because I think that I was supposed to make this film. I know that sounds kind of woo-woo, but I think some stories are supposed to be told. I think what I take away from this film is that whether or not you believe magic can have an effect on you or the psychology can have an effect on you, the power of words are real. And so if those negative words can have this major effect on my life, then positive words can also have a major effect on our lives too. And so I think that this is actually a really positive story, and I think that this is why I wanted to tell this story, because it's about the power of belief. I think for that reason this film is a positive movie, actually, and so I hope people take away the positives from that.
This is a true horrifying story, part 93. This story took place in Sweden in the year 2024. I apologize for my disappearance on social media. I recently got engaged and I was busy doing the wedding preparations, but I promise that I will be back on social media more often as ever. This story was submitted by a man named Ali. Ali, a 20-year-old living in Stockholm, Sweden, shared a small place with his 24-year-old brother, Muhammad. For a while, they stayed in a district called Alfshol, before eventually moving to a better apartment in Blackeberg. It was everything they had hoped for. Quiet, safe, convenient, and their friends visited often. And for the first time in a long time, they were truly happy. Months later, on a cold February evening in 2024, Ali was in his room scrolling through social media. His window was slightly open when he suddenly heard the distant screams of a little girl outside the complex. He brushed it off, assuming it was just some people who were drinking. He turned on his PS5 to play online with his friends. On the TV stand, an empty Coke can sat untouched. Then, without warning, it tipped over. Ali froze. Slowly, he glanced towards the open window, but there was no wind. There was nothing that could have moved that Coke can. It took him a minute to comprehend what just happened. He took off to tell his brother Muhammad about the Coke can that tipped over for absolutely no reason at all. And obviously, he didn't think much of it, and told him to turn on and play some Quran in his bedroom. There were several odd moments. The TV would turn on and off by itself without anyone touching the remote, but it wasn't something that concerned the boys. They witnessed the TV turning on and off, assuming it was just an electrical glitch. About a day or two later, Ali's friend came over to stay the night during the weekend. And Ali tells him about the strange things that he's been experiencing in this new apartment. His friend that's listening starts laughing in the washroom as Ali explained his story. Ali's friend suddenly sees a dark red drop in the sink, then another drop. He looks in the mirror and then notices that his nose is starting to bleed. As Ali starts yelling at him from across the room, trying to convince him that he's being truthful, he doesn't hear his friend respond at all. All he could hear is the steady sound of water running in the sink. Ali's friend never suffered an underlying illness where he'd get a nosebleed for no reason, but Ali assumed so. They both cleaned up and got ready to go to sleep. On that same night, things took a very sharp turn and the boys' lives were at risk. Ali had an episode of sleep paralysis. His eyes were wide open. He sees and feels the presence of 3 dark figures trying to possess his friend that was fast asleep right next to him. He felt pressure down his chest and terrifying movements right above his friend. He wasn't able to move. He wasn't able to scream. This is known as a jathum. Certain types of jinns disturb people in their sleep when their spiritual states is weak or vulnerable. Instantly, both Ali and his friend woke up. Ali breathes heavily as sweat runs down his face, but his friend was shivering and moaning from fear. "What happened to you?" Ali asks his friend. "Ali, I had a nightmare. I saw 3 figures on top of you, trying to kill you." The Quran player they had playing was turned off. No one knows when and who turned it off. As they were explaining each other's dreams, things felt very off in the bedroom. The energy just shifted. They felt strange vibrations around them, and things on the wall started to fall down. This is when they realized whatever is in their bedroom wants them out immediately. They ran to Muhammad after what happened and spent the night staying in Muhammad's bedroom. After this day, Ali never slept in his bedroom, never showered in that room either. When his cousins came over, no one dared to sleep in Ali's bedroom. During the same week, Ali reached out to a local imam or sheikh in their area, but he never got a response. Stuff like this really does happen. And I always recommend to people who constantly move from home to home to always cleanse their new homes by playing Surah Al-Baqarah to keep the sakina inside their homes. May Allah protect you all.